guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here, and welcome to today's video, which is going to be my October wrap up. I actually had a pretty bad reading month in October. I only read 8 books, which for me is not a lot. However, I could have managed and dealt with the fact that I had that if I actually read any 5-star reads, which I did not. I had 4 4-stars, 2 3-stars and 2 2-stars, so not the best reading month. And however, I have had a really busy month, and yeah, lots of things have been going on, so I understand why I didn't read loads, but still a bit annoying. However, let's get started with the 8 books that I did read. So the first book that I read is one that I have had on my shelf for quite a long time, and I was very sceptical going into it because I didn't know what I was going to think, and that is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover I've heard really negative things about. As an author, I've heard that her books are very damaging and very just negative, and the romances are really I don't know, dangerous, I guess. This follows a girl named Tate Collins who goes to live with her brother, and across the hall from her lives her brother's friend Miles, who is a pilot like her brother is, and when she moves in, she finds him passed out outside the apartment door, and they don't really like each other on first sight, and then it's about their attraction, and it's about they decide that they're gonna I guess be I don't know, I want to say friends with benefits, but they're not really friends, so yeah. But they decide basically they're just going to sleep together, and yeah, and then it's kind of about that. We all know it never really works that way, does it? But yeah, I found this to be really interesting. I did find the romance in it was kind of I don't know, there was something about it which drew me in, and I found myself just wanting to continue and see what happened. I can't say this was my favourite book ever. I did give this a 4-star though, which as a romance book I was not surprised, I was not expecting, and I don't know, I found it really interesting. I'm definitely intrigued to read more of her books. Like I said, I've heard quite negative things about other books of hers. I've not really heard too much about Ugly Love, so maybe this is one of the better ones, I don't know. Yeah, I am intrigued to read more by Colleen Hoover, but this one was okay for me. I enjoyed the reading experience. Yeah, and like I said, gave it a 4-star. Second book I read this month was my favourite book of the month. So again, it was a 4-star read, and I mentioned this in my October favourites, which I'll link down below for you if you haven't seen it. I'll also put it up in the cards, I think up there. So yeah, you can go and check that out if you want to. And that is Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. I read the first 100 pages of this, and I wrote on Twitter, should I even continue, because I really wasn't enjoying it. And then it got better, so yeah. I think also one of the reasons this month that I read only 8 books was because all the books I read were plus 350 pages plus, whereas normally I read a few short books in the month. Yeah, this one is nearly 400 pages, and it was very slow read. It took me a long time to get through. But this follows a boy named Wade who is living in a world where there's this thing called the Oasis, which is basically a virtual reality where everybody basically goes to school and works in that virtual reality. But in the true life, there are caravans stacked on top of each other because there's no space for building outwards. So they've essentially just stacked trailers on top of each other. I don't know if you can see that in the pictures here, and he lives in one quite near the top, and is basically the creator of the Oasis has just died and left in his will a treasure map basically to find the key to unlock the Oasis, and the person who finds it essentially takes over, gets loads of money, never has to worry about life again basically, because it's all sorted. There is a lot of gaming references in this, which I personally didn't really understand because I didn't really game in the 80s, and I don't really game now, to be honest. So yeah, I found it really interesting. I do think the first 100 pages were a slog, and then it got much better after that. So I feel like probably quite a lot of people DNF this book. And when I was talking about it on Twitter, a lot of people told me that they didn't like this book and they weren't a fan. However, I gave it a 4-star in the end because I did find it interesting, and I really enjoyed the friendships in this and the romance, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I was a fan of this. It was a good book. It wasn't my favourite, but like I said, 4-star. Next up was the pick that you all chose for my You Choose My TBR. I gave you 3 options, and you decided to go with Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I was excited to read this. This is a thriller, and it follows a couple named Jack and Grace who seemingly have the most perfect life, but it turns out that Grace doesn't really have a typical relationship, shall we say. She never answers the phone, she doesn't go out for lunch without Jack, and there are bars on the bedroom window, and yeah, there are lots of things and obviously I don't want to go into any more detail because I don't want to give anything away. This I gave a 4-star. You did pick well again. This was not a 5-star for me because I really didn't like the ending. However, mainly because I knew what was coming and I was expecting more of a, I don't know how to explain it without giving anything away. Basically, the ending I felt like was a bit too easy and was a bit too kind of like obvious, I guess. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book though. Throughout it, I felt really sick while I was reading it. I do that sometimes. I feel really sick if I read books that have like controlling relationships and stuff like that and stuff. I don't know how to explain it really. It just makes me feel really on edge, and I actually really enjoy that experience because it means that the book is making me feel something. So you did all pick very well. This, like I said, was a 4-star. I would recommend that you pick this up, especially if you've not read loads of thrillers, because I feel like if you've read quite a lot you might know what's going to happen before it happens, if that makes any sense. Or maybe that was just me, I don't know. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it was another 4-star. I did read 3 4-stars for the first 3 books of the month, which was great. Next up is a book that I got from one of my chocolate and a book unboxings, which I did. I got like 3 or 4 boxes probably last year, I think, and this book was on one of my year TBRs. I can't remember which one it was on. I think it might have been on my like 2019 TBR. I did at the beginning of the year, so I'll link that below. But yeah, this one has been on my radar for a long time. This is Good Me Bad Me by Ali Land, and I gave this a 3-star. It was okay. It basically follows a girl named Millie who is living in a foster family, but she has been given a new name because she used to be a girl named Annie and her mother was a serial killer, and she turned her mother into the police. And her mother's just about to go to trial, and basically she has to give evidence at said trial, and it's a kind of about that. It has a lot of the nature versus nurture moments like some books do, which I find really interesting, about whether or not she is likely to become another serial killer or if she's got that side of her, or whether it's completely like not in her genes or whatever. It was a really interesting read. Again, the ending I didn't love, and actually I got to the end and realised that was it, and I was like, I knew all the way through what was about to happen. Like from about halfway, I reckon, I was like, I know the ending already. So yeah, I didn't love this one. It was okay. Again, I feel like sometimes the whole, like, if you've read too many thrillers, it kind of like ruins it a bit. But yeah, I did enjoy the reading experience. Gave it a 3-star because the ending let me down a bit, but I would definitely read more Ali Land, so I'd be interested to know if any of you read any more by her and what you thought of them, because yeah, I would very much like to continue and read some more of her writing. Next up is a book that I was actually sent by the publisher, and I believe this is an independent publisher, as in I think this book was published by the author directly, like, what do you call it, like self-published, that's the word, I think, because the company that this is published under is the same name as the author's surname, so that's my guess. This is Radioactive Evolution by Richard Hummel, and it is published by Hummel Books, so I'm assuming that it's the same. I don't know. Anyway, I got sent this. I was sent an email a while back now from a publishing company asking me if from a publicity company asking me if I wanted to read this book, and they sent this to me, and I was really excited. It is massive. It's like a really big physical book, like in comparison to this sort of thing, it's quite a big book, and it's like 400 pages, I think, nearly 500 pages. So I said I would absolutely read it. It's something a bit different for me because it wasn't something I was expecting, and actually I really enjoyed this. I did end up giving this a 3-star. This basically follows a boy named Jared who is living in almost like an apocalyptic world after there's been like a nuclear war, and they have these things called nanos, which they can use to, like, I don't know, they basically need to be injected regularly with these nanos, otherwise they die. And Jared gets bonded with a dragon named Scarlet, who he then uses to figure out the world. Yeah, this is, I think they call this so this is an RPG based novel, which I believe is to do with a gaming novel, and I got the influences of that. I think as you read this, it does make sense that there is like a gaming element to it, like it would make a really good game. So yeah, I did really enjoy this book. I would definitely read more in the series. I think there's more other books in this series. Yeah, something completely different. Again, it did take me quite a long time to read because it's not like something I would generally pick up, but I did actually really enjoy it, and I'm glad that I read it, and thank you very much to the publisher and also to the publicity company for sending this to me, because I definitely wouldn't have picked this up without being sent it. So yes, it was a very nice surprise. Next up, I read a book that has been on my radar for a really long time, and that is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I read this because people keep telling me how amazing it is, and Emily from Novel Novels and Charlie from Charlie Brooke both love Khaled Hosseini's writing, and this has definitely been a book that I've wanted to read. I do own A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khaled Hosseini, which I've been told is really good too. So this is set in the 1970s in Afghanistan, and it follows a 12-year-old boy named Amir who lives in kind of a wealthy family, and his friend Hassan, who is like works for the family. He's like I don't want to say slave because he's not a slave. He's like I don't know what you call it. I guess that is what it is. But basically they like to do kite fighting together, and then the Russians invade and his family is forced to flee to America, and Amir and Hassan lose touch. Something really bad happens to Hassan, which also causes a rough rift in their friendship, and then it's about their lives and how they end up going back together, or how Amir ends up having to go back to Afghanistan when it's under Taliban rule. And yeah, this was really, really hard hitting. It was a really interesting book. I gave this a 4-star in the end because I found some parts of it a bit slow, and I didn't particularly enjoy, but definitely the last like 75% was better than first 25%. I find that I keep finding that in books, like the setup in books sometimes puts me off, but then I really enjoy the way that it kind of goes from there. So I feel like this book, once you get into it, is really good, but it definitely does take a little while to get there. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I'm definitely wanting to read more by Khaled Hosseini. I don't know if I'll read it super soon, but I definitely want to at some point, and I'm glad that I finally read The Kite Runner because yeah, it was really good. There were definitely trigger warnings for quite a few things in this, so if you're sensitive for certain things, I would probably say steer clear, but otherwise, yeah, a really good read. Earlier on, I think I said I had two 2-star reads and two 3-star reads, but it was actually 3 3-stars and 1 2-star. So this was my least favourite book of the month, and this was my 2-star read, and that is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Now, I would say I did not hate this book, it's just this is not what I was hoping for, I think, when I went in. I liked the aspect, so this is set in Canada, in Toronto, and it starts off with a famous actor named Arthur Leander who dies on stage in the middle of a performance of King Lear, and it goes from that to the same evening there is a worldwide virus that basically kills off like 90% of the population, and then it kind of takes place mainly 20 years later when it's kind of split between that time and 20 years later when the world is completely different, obviously, and it's very much post-apocalyptic, and it follows lots of different things that happen, and it talks about life and morality, and you know, what would you preserve about civilization and what would you go without, and different bits like that. I liked the post-apocalyptic side of this. I found that really interesting, but what I didn't enjoy was the morality side, I guess, which I think is probably what this is meant to be about. I didn't understand the hype behind this. I really wasn't a fan. I found myself getting bored throughout. It's only, I think it's how long is this book? So it's nearly 350 pages, and I just found myself bored after about 150. Like, I'm surprised, to be honest, that I finished it. I only finished it because it was on one of my like end of year TBR or beginning of year TBR videos. Yeah, I really didn't like this book. I enjoyed parts of it. That's the sad thing. Like, it was really good at times, and then other times I just got bored. And I know people say that it's not about the apocalypse part, and it probably isn't, and that's the bit I enjoyed. So yeah, I really wasn't a fan. I probably won't read anything else by Emily St. John Mandel just because I don't think her type of writing is for me. I feel like this is very much literary fiction as well, which is definitely not something that I generally read. Yeah, I would say if you enjoy literary fiction, you enjoy sci-fi, if you enjoy the kind of more whimsical writing and a bit more like atmospheric writing, that you'll probably enjoy this, but it really wasn't for me, unfortunately. And then the last book that I read this month was a book that I have been saying I want to read for years, it feels like, and it probably has been years, and I definitely finally read it, which I feel very good about. I did only give it a 3-star, but that's fine, like, it was okay. This is Room by Emma Donoghue, and it's probably been on about 12 different TBRs that I've made in the past. I finally read it. Like I said, gave this 3-star. This follows a boy named Jack who has always lived in this one room with his mother, who was she was basically abducted and has been kept in this room for like, I don't even know how long. The little boy's 5, so I think it's been like 8 years or something. And she has decided basically to bring Jack up initially, not realising that there is an outside, so he doesn't really know about the outside. He thinks it's all kind of made up and it's just in the TV. And I would have liked this book more if it wasn't written from Jack's perspective. If this had been a third person story and it had been written about the two of them, I would have definitely enjoyed it more. But it's written in Jack's voice, and he's, like I said, a 5-year-old boy, and I found it really irritating. And I feel really bad saying that because it was really well written in parts and I did really enjoy the storyline. However, another thing I will say is that what I was expecting to happen was over within the first 100 pages, and then it wasn't about the room anymore, and it wasn't about what they were going through, and it wasn't about that, and then it was about something else. And I don't know, for a, what is this? Yeah, for a 400-page book, I feel like it wasn't what I was expecting at all. And I do want to watch the movie now because I've heard really good things, and I feel like it could probably make a better movie because it's not going to be so much from just Jack's perspective, I guess. Yeah, I enjoyed it, like I said, but it was only a 3-star. But I am glad that I finally read it and it's off my blimmin' TBR because, oh my goodness me, this has been on there for a while. But there you have it, guys. That is the 8 books that I read in the month of October. Please let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these and if you agreed with me or disagreed. I always love to chat with you about books. Yes, so finally, I've read some of the books that have been on my TBR for ages, which I feel good about. So now I want to do my video shout out, and for today it's going to be the wonderful April from the channel Aprilius Maximus. April has a really good channel. She talks a lot about her dogs as well. She has a dog and she has cats, and she's just qualified to be a teacher at the beginning of the year, I think, and she's just really wonderful and I love to watch her videos. I've definitely talked about her in videos before, I think maybe like a favourites video or something, but I really love April's channel and I would highly recommend that you go and check her out. I think she's fantastic. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and press the little notification bell if you want to get notifications every time I upload, and I will see you next time for another video. Bye guys!